What's up, everyone? Paul here from the Hoops Crew to talk you through yet another difficult topic when it comes to the AFL this week. Yesterday, you would have caught my discussion about all things related to Taron Thomas. Today, I want to discuss the Jeremy Finlayson consequence that he was handed out for his homophobic slur that he tossed out during the Port Adelaide and Essendon game this past weekend. The consequence has been finally determined by the AFL, and it took far too long to get to that. And I feel like there's a whole conversation we could potentially have around that as well. Why did it have to take 4 or 5 days for them to finally determine that it was a 3-week ban is completely beyond me. But the reality is we've got a 3-week ban that is facing Jeremy Finlayson. And there's been a lot of talk about the consequence from a range of different parties. We've heard from Danielle Laidley. We've heard from the AFLPA, so Paul Marsh at the top there. We've heard from Jeremy. Why am I having so many issues with his name? Jeremy Finlayson. Sorry. We're having so many, we've had a lot of different voices, and let alone all the media commentary as well. And I want to try and wade through that as much as possible and try and work out with you what the price is, whether this is fair, whether it should be the new norm, whether it needs to be harder, softer, financial, etc. So let's kind of pick through the details as we have them so far. First, I want to throw to this article here, which actually kind of talks through the consequence in the first place and Paul Marsh's concerns as the CEO of the AFLPA. And the main phrase he uses here, and again, a bit like yesterday, I want a massive shout out to Anna Pavlou, who does amazing stuff, friend of the show. We love you, Anna. Keep it up. Hopefully we see you here soon when you get a moment where you're not dominating the sporting world. Consistently inconsistent is the phrase that Paul Marsh uses and has then kind of been clarified through this article. And he's referencing the difference between what Alistair Clarkson received as a consequence for his comments during the preseason game directed at Jimmy Webster after he'd flattened Jai Simpkin. And I actually think there's more to it than even that. Not all of it related to homophobic slurs, but slurs more broadly. So the 3 examples that I think of are the 2 that we've discussed so far. Jeremy Finlayson and his 3 weeks, Alistair Clarkson with his $20,000 and a suspended sentence there. And then finally, Tex Walker. Now, Tex's slur wasn't homophobic. It was racist. And if my memory serves, and I did double check, it was a 6 or 7 week ban that he received for his racist comments that he made. And what we're looking at here, if we just get purely numerical, and I guess I'm going to try and come at this as a teacher, a maths teacher specifically, is that is the average of all 3. Like what Jeremy Finlayson has received is the average of all of those. Like we've got a 0-week sentence for Alistair Clarkson, a 3-week one for Jeremy Finlayson. I'm not going to get his name right all episode here. And 6 weeks for Tex Walker. That averages out to 3. And I'm wondering if 3 is the number that the AFL has potentially landed on going forward. Now, I am curious, and going back to Paul Marsh's comments, I am really curious as to why within the space of, 5 to 6 weeks, there is this vast difference in consequence for Alistair Clarkson versus Jeremy Finlayson. Clarko obviously has additional baggage hanging over him at the moment with the investigation from his time at Hawthorn. I wonder if that played a part in the whole thing as well. Was there some sympathy directed at North Melbourne because he became the North Melbourne coach, and then there was the racism row that kind of piled up from his time at Hawthorn. Then you get this on top. Are they trying to protect North Melbourne, who is already a club that is struggling, and then to kind of have their marquee, amazing on-field coach, maybe not an amazing person, on-field coach kind of get taken away from them consistently, making their situation harder? I'm wondering if that does play a part in the whole situation, because it is obviously horribly unfair to North Melbourne. But my argument is that shouldn't matter. If someone does the wrong thing, they need to pay a price. This is an individual call that Clarko made, and he did not represent the club. He represented himself and himself only. across both of these scenarios at his time at Hawthorn and the comments he made during the preseason game whilst coach of North Melbourne. The fact that it unfortunately has to hit North Melbourne multiple times shouldn't matter. But I get where they're potentially coming from there. Then we've got the Tex Walker side where he copped 6 weeks. And honestly, I think you could make an argument for 6 weeks being a correct number as well for what he did there. So where does Jeremy Finlayson fit in this whole mix? Is 3 weeks too light? Is it too heavy? Well, what we've heard in this, that he's losing match payments as well. So we do actually have a bit of, and we obviously don't know that figure because we don't publish contracts readily here in Australia in the AFL. So there is a bit of a question as to, I guess, how much is that? But he is one of Port Adelaide's top players, and you'd imagine he's being paid pretty well. So I'm wondering if maybe he's getting kind of the equivalent of the 3 weeks plus a Clarko style financial ban. Maybe it is kind of fair. Maybe that's the balancing act going forward. But I do appreciate what Paul Marsh is talking about here with the consistently inconsistent nature of these consequences. And it is something I think the AFL could stand to be more transparent about. Why does Tex get 6? Why does Clarko get nothing and a fine? Why does Jeremy Finlayson, got it? Why does Jeremy Finlayson only get 3 and kind of an airy-fairy, non-disclosed financial consequence? We need to see consistency here because it makes it so hard for anyone, whether you're a player, a coach, or someone on the sidelines just trying to make comments and try and identify some sort of consistency in this situation. It makes it really, really hard. Now, the ideal situation is that none of this happens. No racism, no homophobia, no discrimination of any sort. Unfortunately, people are kind of learning at different rates what is and isn't acceptable. And so mistakes are going to happen. And we hope they're stamped out as fast as possible. It's just not okay, no matter what. But unfortunately, mistakes are going to happen. But I think majority of society wants is for there to be some sort of consistency here, because there's not right now. And the AFL is doing what the AFL does, and they kind of stand in the shadows and don't really comment at all. They say, here's the consequence, and then don't expand or explain it. And that is problematic as well. So I guess the thing that I really want to drive at the most here is that the consequence for Tex for his racism, the consequence for Jeremy Finlayson and his homophobia, they feel kind of fair in their different ways, I would say. And I do, I guess, say this as someone who hasn't, straight white guy, hasn't been on the receiving end of racist comments and hasn't been on the receiving end of homophobic comments. And so I guess I can't relate. And I do, feel like I need to, disclose that and be honest that I don't have that perspective. And so I don't understand the hurt. But it feels like they are heavier-handed consequences. And I'll be interested to see if the next time someone makes a mistake, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, the next time someone makes a mistake, I hope that the AFL sticks to a consequence that is very similar, if not the same, to what Jeremy Finlayson has received. In the meantime, I implore the AFL to step out and talk about how they got there, because it just feels like a KFC herbs and spices thing at the moment, that no one understands and no one can really explain. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Jeremy Finlayson, his consequence, how that relates to Clarko, how that relates to Tex Walker. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is it fair? Is it too much? Is it too little? What can we do to prevent these sorts of scenarios in the future? Drop those comments in the comment section of the YouTube video. Hit us up on social media. We'd love to hear what you've got to say. We consider these conversations really, really important to be had, and the education of all people, whether they're AFL players or consumers of football or anyone else. We consider these conversations to be super, super important. So please engage with us, social media, the YouTube comments, catch us on Patreon, catch us on social media. Thank you very much for watching. Positive Geelong related stuff coming soon. Cheers, guys. Remain Geelong strong.